Every single employee in the office laughed at the old janitor. They called him useless, invisible, a nobody. But one night, the CEO walked into the building, looked directly at the janitor, and started crying. Nobody understood why, until they discovered who the old man really was. Rain slammed against the giant glass windows of the office building while employees rushed through the bright hallways carrying coffee cups and laptops. In the middle of all the noise, an old janitor quietly cleaned the marble floor alone. His name was Walter, 70 years old, thin body, gray hair, wrinkled hands, round glasses, blue janitor uniform. Most workers ignored him completely, and the ones who noticed him usually mocked him. "Careful, old man," one employee laughed while kicking trash near Walter's mop. Another smirked. "You'll probably die in this building one day." The group burst into laughter. Walter simply smiled softly and continued cleaning. Every morning, he arrived before sunrise. Every night, he left after everyone else, silent, invisible, forgotten. But nobody knew the truth. Nobody knew Walter once owned the entire company. 30 years earlier, Walter built the business from nothing. A tiny computer repair shop in a poor neighborhood. He worked day and night until it became one of the biggest tech companies in America. But after losing his wife and son years later, Walter disappeared from public life completely. The company was handed over to new investors and a young CEO. Slowly, people forgot the man who created everything. Even worse, the new management removed every photograph of Walter from the building. To them, he was ancient history. But Walter never cared about money anymore. The only thing he wanted was to stay close to the company he built with his own hands. So years later, he secretly returned as a janitor, and nobody recognized him. One cold Friday evening, the office prepared for a massive celebration party after closing a billion-dollar business deal. Music blasted through the building. Employees laughed loudly while expensive drinks covered every table. Meanwhile, Walter quietly cleaned empty coffee cups near the back hallway. Then suddenly, a young female intern accidentally bumped into him. Walter fell hard onto the floor, his glasses slid across the marble tiles. The hallway went silent for 1 second. But instead of helping him, people started laughing again. "Oh my God," someone whispered while recording with a phone. "Grandpa's too weak to even stand." Walter slowly reached for his broken glasses while his hands trembled badly. And for the first time, his eyes looked hurt, really hurt. The young intern froze immediately. Guilt filled her face. She quickly helped Walter stand up. "I'm so sorry," she whispered softly. Walter smiled gently. "It's all right." But before the moment could continue, the main elevator suddenly opened, and the CEO entered the hallway, surrounded by security guards. Everyone instantly became nervous. The CEO was famous across America, rich, powerful, feared. As he walked through the hallway, he suddenly stopped. His eyes locked onto Walter. Everything changed. The CEO's face turned pale. His breathing became uneven. "No way," he whispered. The entire office became silent. The CEO slowly walked toward the old janitor. One manager laughed nervously. "Sir, don't worry, he's just the janitor." But the CEO ignored him completely. Instead, he stood directly in front of Walter. Tears slowly filled his eyes, and then, to everyone's shock, the CEO hugged the old janitor tightly. The hallway froze completely. Nobody moved, nobody even breathed. The CEO looked around at the shocked employees. Then he said words that destroyed the entire room. "This man built everything you see here." Silence, complete silence. Some employees looked sick instantly. Others stared at Walter in disbelief. The CEO continued speaking emotionally. 30 years ago, while everyone else chased money, Walter sacrificed his entire life to create this company. His voice cracked. He gave jobs to thousands of families. Then the CEO looked around the hallway angrily. "And you people mocked him?" Nobody could look Walter in the eyes anymore. The young intern who helped Walter started crying quietly. One employee slowly lowered his phone in shame. Another whispered, "Oh my God." Then the CEO revealed something even more shocking. Walter still owns 51% of this company. The hallway exploded with panic. Managers turned pale instantly. The same people who laughed at Walter minutes earlier now looked terrified. But Walter simply sighed softly. Then he looked around the room. Not angry, not hateful, just disappointed. "You know what hurts the most?" Walter said quietly. "It's not the insults.